Hi, welcome everybody. Warm regards and welcome from Vattikutti Foundation. And also on behalf of Professor Bandari, Dev and his team, it's pleasure to welcome all of you. And even more pleasure and honor to actually introduce my very close friend, a fantastic colorectal surgeon, a great academician, excellent surgeon, and a close friend of me, Auli Saklani, who is extensively trained in UK in colorectal and who heads the department of colorectal at TMH Mumbai. His area of interest is minimal access. He has done thousands and thousands of cases in minimal access. He is one among a few surgeons who is very versatile, both with laparoscopy, robotic, open. So he has all the features of colorectal in his armamentarium. He has several good international national publication. Again, Jolly fellow, very good person. Always nice to hang out, not just inside the OT, also outside. And especially the topic that has been chosen today is something which is very apt because we all know we surgeons moved from surgery first, then chemoradiation to a new adjuvant downsizing chemoradiation. And then, now the medical oncologist has taken a step ahead and they conduct most of the trial. And then, when a medical oncologist conduct a trial, what would you expect? They want to finish their quota of chemo first, nothing left, then call the surgeon back. So the Rapido trial is a very nice way to analyze it. And the best way to analyze it, not by a medical oncologist or radiation, but a surgeon. Because, surgeon is somebody who is a complete person in oncology, who knows all the three. So I welcome and I request my very close friend, Professor Saklani, to go ahead and share his knowledge today about rectal cancer, preoperative induction therapy, followed by dedicated operation. And he's going to analyze the Rapido trial. Thank you, and over to you, Saklani.
Thank you, Somu. I think I'll just try to share my content if he makes me the host. Thanks. I would like to thank Dr. Mahendra Bandari and Vattikutti Foundation for giving me this opportunity. I think this is an interesting topic because normally this is only robotic thing, but with the COVID thing, there are a lot of robotic video sessions happening. But I think to do good surgery, you need good pre-op assessment and therapy. So I think this is for a long time, there has not been something that has changed drastically. And this year, ASCO, there have been so many presentations, which is trying to take everything off. So what I'll do is we're going to discuss the Rapido trial. And that's what it is. So I'm Professor Colorectal Surgery at Tata Memorial Hospital, and we want to see whether this new trial is going to change our practice. We know incidence of colorectal cancer in India is rising, a bit low compared to the other world, but it's still there. And the worst thing, the survival of colorectal cancer in the country is the lowest in the world. And so we need to make efforts to improve things. And that is because people present at a very late stage. They are very young at presentation, and they are often mistaken for hemorrhoids. So locally advanced rectal cancer is about 50% cases, and it's difficult to have good outcomes when people come at an advanced stage. So these are the sort of tumors that you have, mucinous tumors involving the whole pelvis there. And then you would think what to do for these ones, especially when they're young, they don't want total extensive surgery or exentration. So can you downstage them? Thankfully, this has been done many years back by the SOR group, which they showed instead of trying to operate on these patients, if you give pre-operative chemoradiation and then operate, the local recurrence rates come down by 50%. So it's about 6% or so. It was also shown by Jean-Francois Bosset, if you give chemotherapy as a sensitizing agent, it again decreases local recurrence rate. It does not improve overall survival, but it decreases the local recurrence. So far, all the studies which are there have just improved local response. And then things started changing. A study by Julio Garcia Aguilar said that after chemoradiation, if you give consolidation chemo, it improves the complete response rate. So this was the phase 2 study where they gave consolidation chemo, 2 cycles, 4 cycles, and 6 cycles of FOLFOX. And they found, as you can see here, the complete response rate kept on increasing to 38%. But as you gave number of cycles, the toxicity increased, but there were no major complications. But this complete response rate did not lead to improved survival or DFS. So that was still a problem. So people were thinking of total neoadjuvant therapy. Now look at the situation in India. This is a locally advanced rectal cancer, looks dirty, the CRM looks positive. So you would think if you give chemoradiation, the margins would be sterilized and be free. But you see, even after chemoradiation, the margin remains positive. So what do you do in these cases? If you are in the Western world, you would see this in less than 5% cases. In India, it's relatively high. So should you still operate on them? What we tried to do is try to give additional chemotherapy. So that is called consolidation chemotherapy. But we were not giving it immediately after chemoradiation. We were giving it after 6 to 8 weeks. And that was called salvage chemotherapy. And then we were able to salvage 60% of the cases. But what happened to the other 40%? Some of them progressed, some of them didn't respond. So the idea is then you get a concept that is treatment-related failure. It's not only who you can save, but who you can't save. So that outcome is very important. And the most important thing in India, or the rectal cancers are not the same. There are 3 different groups. One, the standard adenocarcinoma, which is group C, you can see the default plus a 7%. On chemoradiation, only 5 or 6% progress. But on the other hand, there's group A, which is signet ring. When you give them chemoradiation, almost 25% progress. So for them, waiting too long is not very good. So should we give chemotherapy for them, or should we give total neoadjuvant for everyone? And this trial, the POLISH-2 trial, came out sometime by Abuchko, and this tried to show if you give 5 days of chemoradiation and you give 3 cycles of consolidation chemotherapy, the outcomes were similar to long course chemoradiation. The outcomes were similar in terms of local controlled DFS and OS. And so it looked thing, but only problem with the study was there was no preoperative staging. So it could not become the standard of care all over the world. So despite evidence for this, people were still waiting for this. And in spite of giving chemotherapy for 3 cycles, it did not improve DFS or OS. And this trial came across in ASCO, the Rapido trial. People had been waiting for this for long. So which is called as rectal cancer preoperative induction chemotherapy, followed by dedicated operation. I think what people always think that it is a sort of total neoadjuvant therapy, but I think the last part has never been touched upon. So that's called dedicated operation. So by doing the same treatment, you may not have the same outcome, but you need dedicated operation for this. This was an international multicentric phase 3 randomized trial. This is done mainly in the Western world and Scandinavian countries. Really good surgeries, TME has been done over the last 20-25 years. And for them, local recurrence is no longer a problem because the local recurrence is about 5%. But if you come to India, local recurrence rates are about 10% because they present at a later advanced stage. And for them, this was important because most people were failing. So most of the time, the DFS would be 70%. So 30% patients were relapsing, and they would relapse as metastasis. So the only way you can look at metastasis was giving chemotherapy. But if you had chemoradiation and surgery, only 50% could take chemotherapy. So the compliance was low. And that is why adjuvant chemotherapy has not improved survival. In the Dutch metastatic study, when they gave short course radiation and chemotherapy, it improved the compliance, downstaging and things. So this was very thing. So whatever they based it, it is based on their own study, own local recurrence rate, and own idea of short course RT and chemotherapy. So in this study, there was an experimental arm and a standard arm. And the standard arm was chemoradiation for 5.5 weeks, wait for 8 weeks, surgery. Adjuvant chemotherapy after surgery was left to the team. So only 50% people had adjuvant chemotherapy because adjuvant was more there. In the experimental arm, what they gave was short course of radiotherapy, and they decided to give either 6 cycles of Capox or 9 cycles of Folfox. So compared to the POLISH-2 trial, which gave 3 cycles of chemotherapy, they decided to give 6 cycles of Capox. And surgery was done. They did not take all rectal cancer. So this was one of the problems with Trans-Tasmanian study or the Stockholm study, because they took all rectal cancers and then nothing came significant. Here they took only the higher rectal cancers which have a higher risk for distant metastasis. These were MRI, which was T4 disease, N2 disease, and EMPI. EMPI is known to have a higher risk of distant metastasis. They took that disease which rushed the mesorectal fascia and who had enlarged lateral pelvic nodes. No other study has looked at lateral pelvic nodes, which is getting as important as a sign of local recurrence. Their primary endpoint was initially 3-year DFS, but then they changed it to treatment-related or disease-related treatment failure. So during treatment, if the disease progressed or he has metastatic, what was taken as treatment failure. If you went an R2 resection, that was treatment failure. If you had recurrence on follow-up, that was treatment failure. I think this is one of the most important things of this study, is defining thing called as treatment-related failure, because that can change all the studies which are going to be done. The secondary endpoint was, does giving chemotherapy with short course, does it improve the R0 resection rate? Does it improve complete response rate? And more importantly, does it improve survival? They studied the toxicity and complication profile in an earlier study, and they found it was nothing significant. For this, the numbers they needed to treat to improve treatment-related failure from 30 to 22.5%. So normally you would think normally DFS is 70% or 75%, and you want to improve it by 10% to 85%. So here they took it the other way around. They look at treatment-related failure and decided to decrease it by 7.5%. For this, they needed 842 patients. Most of these countries were from Scandinavia, Spain, and Slovenia. So you can see the consort diagram. About 441 started treatment on the standard arm and 460 in the experimental arm. You can see with the green arrows there. During treatment itself, if you see in the standard arm, quite a few developed metastatic disease or progressive disease, whereas in the experimental arm, they were slightly on the lower side. Finally, almost 90% of the patient underwent surgery. The median age of these patients was 62. So this is unlike India, but it's about 46 or so. 70% were males. Performance status was good. So as you can see here, but the only difference here, if you look at it very carefully, about 30% of these patients were upper rectal cancer. So normally for upper rectal cancer, not many people would believe you should give chemoradiation. We do get such cancers like this here, but if you ever send a paper for publication in upper rectal cancer for chemoradiation, they would send it back. So that is the thing, and they would cause it a bias in selection. The other thing you can see is 30% of these patients were T4 tumors or had extramural invasion. 65% were N2 or had mesorectal fissure involvement. So every patient, about 50% of these patients had at least 2 high risk factors. When they looked at toxicity related events, and they found they was completely similar. From the standard arm, they combined the toxicity of chemoradiation and adjuvant chemotherapy. And they found there was no significant difference between them. If you, almost all of them were able to have good resections. This R1 resection rates were only about 10% or so. But if you look on it, they underwent anti-resection APR. For 30% of T4 cancers, you can't see many extended resection or exentrations. This is only an abstract, and we still have to wait for the full paper there. But the type of surgery done seems to be almost similar in both groups. With regards to complication, there was no significant difference in complication rate, and anastomotic leaks were similar. So if you're a surgeon and you are worried that giving chemotherapy would increase complications or mortality, this study showed it wasn't very significant. If you expect a high-risk rectal cancer surgery, like it was T4 N2 thing, the CRM involvement was positive in 10% cases. So this is what you would expect. But if you look at the complete response rate in the experimental art, it is double. It's 28% compared to 14%. And that has been seen in a lot of other studies as well. So that is really important. And if you look at the primary endpoint, which was disease-related, treatment-related failure, in the standard arm, it was 30%, and in the experimental arm was 23.7%. So a significant difference there. So finally, what it aimed to achieve, it has achieved. And even the same thing was seen for distant metastasis. So giving 6 cycles of chemotherapy has shown that the distant metastatic rate has fallen down. No other study had shown this other than one more that we'll discuss. So that is really, really encouraging after a long time. However, if you look at local renal failure rate, it seems to be slightly higher on the experimental arm at 3 years of 8.7% compared to 6%. These are high risk rectal cancer groups. So you don't expect local recurrence rates to be less than 5%, but even this is pretty good, I would think. But the only thing is experimental arm is a slightly higher rate. On the forest plot, everything seems to be matching. There's no difference in overall survival. Actually, for most of the studies that you see, whatever you do, it doesn't change overall survival. What we look for either local recurrence improval or disease-free survival. A quality of life at 3 years for both the things was similar. Even short course radiotherapy did not increase the risk of LAR scores. So finally, a great study which finally showed it by giving consolidation chemotherapy with short course radiation or the experimental arm, the pathological complete response rate doubled. His disease-free failure or disease-related treatment failure decreased by 7%, metastasis rate was less than 7%, local recurrence rate and overall survival were no different, and there was no increase in toxicity or surgical thing. This is what everyone needs. However, there are certain drawbacks. We have to still wait for some papers to come back because they didn't say the grade of the tumor. The number of people who progressed on treatment was slightly low. We don't know how many were signet or wholly differentiated tumors. 30% of the patients are upper rectal tumors. People would say these people don't need chemoradiation at all. Despite having so advanced disease, 50% patients had laparoscopic surgery. We don't know what was the boost effect of radiotherapy. There is no data on how many people became MRF free after chemoradiation. There was no extended resection or exenteration. There was a time difference between the two groups. So some people could say you waited a bit longer. There's only one other trial which has shown bigger similar benefit, is something called as PRODIGI trial. This looked at induction chemotherapy with FOLFIRINOX and long course chemoradiation compared to standard therapy. So induction chemotherapy, if you have to give, it should not be Capox, it is FOLFIRINOX. That is another great study. This has shown almost similar results with complete response doubling to 28% and 7% improvement in DFS survival. So with these studies say, if you want to have good outcomes and if you have a high risk patient, either give induction chemotherapy with FOLFIRINOX and a chemoradiation, or you can try out the Rapido regimen. We have been giving this in metastatic setting. So this is the moderately differentiated rectal cancer with few rectal lesions. CRM looks positive, looks EMPI. We give them chemoradiation and it is still positive. Liver mets have responded and they have disappeared. So we do a robotic APR and they look okay. But there are some things like mucinous tumors. So if you have a low rectal cancer and anal fistula and mucinous tumors, you can give them chemoradiation or you can give them chemotherapy, it won't change. So you give them chemoradiation and the procedure looks the same. So should you subject them to chemotherapy for all these patients when the final surgery is going to be the same? It's a difficult one. So finally, what you have to do is something like a prone extraelevator APR with removing the whole pelvic floor and to get R0 resection. I'm just going to show a touch of a video. I think robotic is a really good instrument, and sometimes you can explore anatomy as well. So you have, this is actually a neuroendocrine tumor. We've given MRF is involved, and it is actually touching the obturator internus muscle. So you can see a radiation is given, and along with chemotherapy, cisplatin topicide. I think this is quite a laid back video. So what we normally try to do, even in IBMI patients, we try to find the duodenojejunal flexure and go below the inferior mesenteric vein. The inferior mesenteric vein is identified, hooked up, and clipped. I think some people go for the artery, but I think if you come for the vein first, there is very number of problems for missing out veins is very less. Okay, and you follow the inferior mesenteric artery. I think the robot is a really good instrument. So I think if you use it finally, it's pretty good and you should really enjoy surgery. I think in COVID days, actually, it's very unlikely you'll get many cases to do. And sometimes this is the best way to enjoy it. Also in COVID times, you don't require a lot of people in theater, one assistant, and that should be good. So if you're sitting on your console away from patient and anyone else, and the assistant is sitting there, you have good management of aerosols, and that's good. So here you can see we've taken the vein and we're going along the plane. So this is what people would call it complete mesocholic excision, which has just been turned. But you do this all the time. People have been doing it for ages together. So this is between the pericolonic and pelvic phase. This is the last part there once you mobilize it. I normally try to go into the pelvis before I go laterally, and you can see the good TME plane going there. The hypogastric nerves can be seen very clearly there with good control. Once you've done this, then you come laterally and free the colon. For this one, we have planned that we are going to divide the levators at the level of ischial spine. Even if you do a prone extralevator APR, to cut the levators at the level of ischial spine is a bit difficult. So what we plan to do is to do a expose the right lateral pelvic node dissection, trace the internal pudendal artery going into and the lumbosacral trunk. You find the entry into the ischial spine, and then divide the levator along with the sacrospinous ligament. So here you can see if you mobilize the ureter, we come across the iliac vessel, the external iliac vessels and veins, and then you read the lateral wall. I'm so Somashekar does a great thing in gynae. I've seen him; he does it really fast. But we're just trying to find a way into the ischial spine. So here you can see the bifurcation of external and internal iliac vein. We're just going to go deeper to the obturator vessels there. You can see the obturator now. Initially, we used to take only the nodes above the obturator vein, but now we take it below as well. We follow the obliterated hypogastric. So once you see the origin of, you go below the obturator vein and take all the vessels below there. So you can see the obturator nerve. You can see the communicating vein between the external iliac vein and the obturator vein as well. Clip the obliterated umbilical artery because the idea is to follow the internal iliac artery and follow the other branches. Superior vesicle and obturator will be ligated, and you will follow the pudendal down. So you have to come from all sides. You again go anteriorly and free it off. You can see the vast difference. You taking all the fibrofatty tissue from there as well. Sometimes I don't make it fast because there's a lot of lag when you transmit, so sometimes going slow is better. So we've already, this is the obliterated, we are cutting off going off to the abdominal wall there. And when you do that, then you have a paravesical area there. So if you're going to do a lateral pelvic node dissection, you have to free it off completely as well. You can see almost the bladder side coming up there. So you free up the obturator now completely. So this side is finished. A lot of obturator veins here. You take another distal branches as well. Our whole idea is to follow the internal iliac artery going down. So you can see another branch going there, which you ligate. Then you will have the inferior vesical veins which are going up, which you will take as well. Because we're going to do it on one side itself, that's pretty okay. We normally take it en bloc as well, but our whole idea is to find the ischial spine and everything. So that's the inferior vesicle that goes. I think sometimes the robo has a great thing because it can let you explore anatomy which you would have never seen in cadavers, and you can do it at your own pace there. So this is the piece of fat which is across the pudendal vessels you'll take out. When you do lateral pelvic node dissection, initially we had recurrence rates of about 20%. So because we were not taking these nodes out. So here you can see the pudendal artery going down along the ischial spine. Here you can see the lumbosacral trunk. So when you want to cut the ischial spine there, you have to see that lumbosacral trunk. We do a lot of lateral extended resection. That is the sacrospinous ligament we are cutting now. So you see, you define the lumbosacral trunk and the pudendal artery there. And then you cut the sacrospinous ligament and you divide the levator at origin. You mobilize the ureter and you preserve the sympathetic hypogastric nerves. So the ureter hypogastric fascia, it is all in the same line. So you preserve it and don't cut the nerves there. If you pull the promontory, you can see the hypogastric nerves there. You can see it again on this side. So you try to preserve it. So lateral pelvic node dissection with no preservation is pretty good. Again, you can see you enter the, make sure you communicate laterally. Now you have to do an APR. This is the middle rectal vessels. Normally you take it medially in the rectum because you don't want to damage the neurovascular bundle. Here, for the first time, you've actually seen the middle rectal vessel coming from the origin. Now, as you go posterior in the rectum, you divide the levator. You come to your clip. When you divided the pudendal vessels, you can see it again. You ligate it again. And once you cut it, then you will cut the whole levator across that part. Next part, you have to finish your APR anyway, so the anterior peritoneal reflection is cut. I think the best landmark is to find the seminal vesicle. Here, because you mobilize the ureter, it's not there. You can see the denonvillous fascia coming up there. Here, this is an unusual disease because the lumen doesn't have any disease which responded to chemotherapy. It is a nodal disease which is there. So you don't have to take historectal fat out completely. You just have to divide the levator at higher point where the disease is. Here you can cut the levator from the top itself. So you have a lot of vision. A slightly high BMI patient, so probably you can do this easier. If you did the same thing in laparoscopy, but it requires a lot more control. For standard APR, you probably don't need to do that much because you can do more harm than good if you go too low down. So once you finish the dissection from the top end, you can actually cut the whole of the levator as well, so as laterally as you can. I think the rectum is cut and the perineal dissection is standard. It was large cell neuroendocrine carcinoma. So I think you would think it was good surgery and everything should go uneventfully, but in surgery that everything that does well will not happen well. Unfortunately, after 2 weeks, he had some secondary bleed. He developed a pseudoaneurysm of the pudendal artery, but it was embolized and went off home again. Thank you very much. So I'll hand over to my co-host, Dr. Somashekar, and see how things are.
Thank you, Saklani. That's an excellent talk and excellent to analyze. And all our colleagues who are logged in are already congratulating. A nice topic, very well analyzed by Saklani, and an excellent video too. What I'm going to do is, before I open it up to the discussion and take question and answer, already a lot of questions are there on question and answer section and also on the chat section. What I will do is I will now analyze the same trial what Saklani told practically with a couple of slides, and then we come back and take his expert opinion on this, and then we open it up completely. So as Saklani told, we know very well that the final full-length article has not come, but the beauty is the radiation oncology and medical oncology group has published part of their trial already in a journal. So we got a lot of insight from that. And if all of you are ASCO full-time member, then you have access to a couple of more slides which they have not presented actually in ASCO. So what we did is at our Manipal Cancer Center, we discussed this on our tumor board and we tried to analyze this particular. It's very important to understand this trial is done not by surgeon or radiation, but the medical oncology group. And the way medical oncologists look at pathological CR and outer. So, but it's very important for us to understand what is the surgeon take on this. What the Saklani analyzed Rapido trial, the safety, pros and cons, we know this is the history. We started off with surgery first and then from healed, and then we came back to Dutch TME where we thought short course RT is not inferior, but then the German trial, NSABP trial, R03 came and told that still conventional RT was superior for loco-regional control. Obviously, there is no overall survival benefit in any of this trial. And now this is an era. Those of you who attended ASCO GI in San Francisco 2019 January, there was a very good trial on TNT, but it is not a randomized like the one Saklani told. So it was a non-randomized trial which first opened the eyes to TNT, total neoadjuvant treatment. And it will be surprising to know that trial actually concluded there is also some marginal overall survival benefit. but it was not randomized controlled trial. So people were actually waiting for that. Now the main problem with this particular trial we notice is there is jugglery of many other things. Means, one is the timing of surgery in both group is little different. One place the type of chemo given is different. The duration for which chemo given is different in both control arm and standard arm. Also the type of RT is different. So what happens, there are too many variables. We all know that the long course RT is highest benefits is in the low rectal cancers and a little more advanced disease for low, and especially when it is a borderline sphincter preserving. We had MSKCC2 trial which showed conventional chemo RT increased the chance of sphincter preservation for low rectal cancer where dentate line per se was normal. So these were the strength of conventional long course RT. And it is obvious that if you give RT, you need to wait reasonably enough to allow the downsizing and effect to happen. Now the short course RT concentrated predominantly and upper and mid, and there you operate 5 fractions, 7 day you operate. So our aim is local control with negative TME margin and not necessarily the response rate and not necessarily the sphincter salvage. Then we had this total neoadjuvant treatment, which came the Brown University trial, which looked at PCR. Now near total thing, which actually Saklani presented. Now it's very interesting to know that currently there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trial on TNT going on. So we're going to get more defined. And it is even more interesting, the medical oncologists have moved one step ahead. Total neoadjuvant treatment without RT. See the last 2 trial. I hope a day will not come total neoadjuvant treatment without surgery. So all surgeons are out. So it's very interesting to know consolidation, short course with conventional but complete neoadjuvant and no RT. And I'm very happy there's no trial without surgery. Now this is what Saklani told. So what I'll do is I'll read in between the line because I got an access to little more literature. This is something very important to understand. Most of the good surgery done for rectal cancer, the recurrence starts at 3 to 5 years. And this trial currently stopped at 3. And the moment you touch 3, see the curve started separating. All surgeons know, say shabby surgery, it recurs in 3 years. In a good cancer center, like what Saklani and most of our colleagues do, proper multidisciplinary MDT approach done, and chemo RT is also used. The recurrence starts somewhere on 3rd and starts peaking at 5th, 6th. See, now you see the moment we are at 3, the recurrences have started. So it's very important that the only purpose of RT would be for locoregional control because we know it doesn't give overall survival. So local recurrence is separating up and it's climbing up, and it will be nice when the same trial at 5th, 7th year is seen. This would probably separate more. So the second thing is, when you look the forest plot appearance, if you see that left side is short course RT with neoadjuvant total. The right side is conventional RT with chemo. You look back here, the chemo was not standard. It was left to the institute. So if the institute use their own chemo, see the forest plot start moving, favoring the conventional arm. If you use the chemo they told, because now that FOLFOX, what they have given is not what is followed standard, then it moves away. So it's very important to understand that when you allow the institute to pick their chemo, then they select the best chemo, then actually the conventional practice, what we do, long-term RT with chemo, wait for 8 weeks and operate, it trend to have a better. So it's very important. Second thing is the final proof of pudding is, see, pathological CR is not right to analyze at this point. The reason is here you're given RT and operated, still chemo to follow. So they are going to achieve pathological CR in systemic metastasis. In one group you finish chemo, so the pathological CR will be more if you identify. There are different timeline of treatment, but at the end of entire treatment, the overall survival should have mattered if that more PCR is added, but it didn't matter. That shows that the PCR which it achieved at intermediate timeline, half treatment analyzed in conventional, full treatment in the experiment arm didn't make a difference. So it's very important to understand overall survival didn't matter. So PCR achieved early doesn't translate into survival. Second thing is, we know the proof of putting of conventional RT waiting for 8 weeks is low rectum. In the trial, only 23% were low rectum. In India, you see, most of ours are bulky, young people, Signet, T3 bordering T4 or early T4, more than N2 node. So the low rectum where this conventional RT and waiting 8 weeks is there is not tested upon. It's a very good strata of patients. This is what I told you, full-length article of the Rapido trial published by the other group, not the surgery. Surgery group is going to come later. We need to wait, but a lot of insights are there in this full-length published article, which is already available on European Journal of Surgical Onco. So what I have done is I analyzed this particular area. We actually think that the complications should be different, but quality of life is not altered. Always chemo given before surgery, all RT given before surgery, in reality should have less morbidities, but not so, which means surgery done after chemo RT is equivalent. So no change in the outcome. But if you look back, because it is a short course, little bit neurological plexopathy complications are little more in the experimental total neoadjuvant arm. So if any morbidity is same, mortality is same, but neural morbidity or little more in short course, and then quality of life didn't matter. This is something which is worrying for me. We always debate. A lot of my very good colleagues, Anil Herur is there and Subramanyeshwar are all logged in. We always say that we have zero conversion rate. See, this is a trial done by good centers, good people who are expertise like Avni Saklani in minimal access, both lab and robot. They have 10% conversion. This is little worrying for me. The conversion in a tertiary care center with multimodality treatment after passing learning curve should have been 3 to 5%. And now you see that the conversion is more in the short course arm. We all know that the ideal surgery would be if you operate 5th day after short RT. But if you are going to operate beyond 8 weeks, it is plaster, not disease, fibrosis, more bleeding, and more difficult, technically challenging, and more conversion. So if you see that the conversion rate was more in the short course arm with all neoadjuvant chemo, and that is at 10%. Also, it's very important to understand blood loss is also more in a short course waiting, because invariably you give short course, complete all the chemo, 8 weeks plus you're operating. So look at this, blood loss was more in the experimental than the standard arm. This is something very important. All the people, surgeon themselves are analyzed to analyze based on the Dutch TME at the end of surgery. How do they analyze the TME? The surgeon themselves analyzed, it is intact only in 78% in experimental arm, and whereas it is more than 85% in standard arm. So I'm a little bit worried. More blood loss, more plexopathy, no overall survival change, more blood loss, probably intactness of TME is different. And this is the quality of life, surprising. All of them are same, which should have been little different. So the points of discussion, even though there is a doubling of CR, no impact on overall survival. Decrease is achieved at more local recurrence without change in the distant metastasis, having an impact on overall survival. And this is something, anastomotic leak was 1.7% more in the experimental arm. This is important to know, but 1.7 is not statistically significant, but that's something which we need to keep in on. So local recurrence was little high. Low rectum, where the proof of putting of conventional treatment is there, is not tested upon. No change in survival. In fact, this is very interesting, which the author themselves told. First 2 years, standard arm performed better in survival. Only when they reached 3rd year, the treatment arm catched up and they became equal. But this is only at 3rd year. Remember, 5th, 7th year, you look, maybe the curve may say a different story. And too many variables, different chemo, different time, and different short-term, long-term, too many variables. So blood loss conversion in open were more. So this is what was analyzed by the editorial of European Journal. Several questions remains to be answered. If you have a high risk, low cancer, will Rapido group subset allow? Just relying and delaying distant metastasis without impact on overall survival, is it an enough goal for us? Because they changed the goal of this trial twice. Low number of low rectal, short course not being effective is a worry. Overall survival benefit is not there. DFS not reached, short 3-term follow-up. So this was actually an ASCO poster I borrowed from Dr. Nitin, my fellow. So these are some of our devil's advocate looking at both the place. I would first request Avleens to just little bit give a comment, then we'll go for the question and answer which have come already in the session. Thank you. So Avnish, there is already a question. Should they analyze the upper third, lower third separately? Should they analyze young patient with bulky tumors separately? This is from our colleague Anil Herur, who is an excellent surgical oncologist on minimal access GI in Bombay. So what is the comment?
I think we have to realize when you submit a paper for publication and you do it, then it will be cost selection bias. And how have you given radiotherapy to upper rectal cancer? When it comes from the European side, then they call it limitations of the study. So I think that's very true. I think we sent a patient for locally advanced rectal cancer for chemoradiation, and they sent it back. So, but that is true because they haven't put the subtypes of the tumor. Poorly differentiated tumor and mucinous tumors aren't there. And I agree with you, lower rectal tumors are definitely low. And from our experience as well, onco chemoradiation seems to work well. They said the juxtarenal lymph nodes induction chemotherapy practice. I think it's difficult to know, but here 60% of the patient had N2 disease and they seem to be doing well. But if you look at this, 15% of the patient in the trial had lateral pelvic lymph nodes. So even if you think 50% responded, 50% would have been there. But in the surgery arm, there is no thing about whether they have given lateral pelvic node dissection. 30% of these patients were T4 tumors, but they have not mentioned exentration or extended dissection of the tumor. So there's a lot to be still seen. So probably, if you go wide enough, then probably do you need chemotherapy at all? I think we have been using consolidation chemotherapy for CRM positive patients, and we see the tumor tends to shrink, but the lateral nodes, they don't. And we will have more of lateral recurrences. So I think the nodes are not responding to chemotherapy. The tumor may respond, or it may be the radiotherapy is acting. So I put the Rapido thing as the devil's advocate. It's not that I'm propagating it so much.
Absolutely, I know that. You have everything in the armamentarium, no one fit all solution. You case select. It's a good discussion. See, Dr. KVVN Raju, my senior surgical onco from GCRI, who is an excellent minimal access surgical onco from Indo-American Hyderabad. He has a question. Has the improvement of PCR, which was noted in the trial arm, did it alter the surgical choice? So I don't think I have any information. Do you have any information doing limited surgery, more surgery? That's one of the...
I think... Well, actually, I was a reviewer for this paper as well, but even in the paper itself, they had not mentioned. We, of course, can't disclose all that thing, but we have to still wait for the full paper and the details and appendix to come and think to say. But they haven't said whether but both the arms had a percentage of patients who went on wait and watch. So they were they were still more in the standard arm compared to the experimental arm. Even the people who progressed were slightly more actually on the standard arm. So we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and watch.
Dr. Jagannath Dikshit, my colleague from Bangalore, HCG, an excellent robotic GI oncosurgeon. His area of interest is that, who does a lot of HIPEX as well. He has asked, are there any metronomic chemo given in any arm? I don't think there is. The only change from what I remember is in the conventional arm, it was not mandated to stick to FOLFOX 4 or 6, but I don't think any of them received any other form of chemo, right? Avnish, did I miss anything?
That's right, yeah. I think they left it to the institutions to see what if they wanted to give adjuvant chemotherapy or not, or what adjuvant chemotherapy. So actually 57% of the institute gave chemotherapy, but half of them didn't. So I don't think anyone has got any idea about metronomic chemotherapy. Or they haven't also mentioned if there were recurrences, there was salvage was done or not to make the overall survival similar.
Probably it is too early. We are at 3. Those things would be probably by 5, 7 we might start. There is another question from Dr. Karthik Chandra. He's a very good senior surgical onco and robotic surgeon from Vizag Cancer Center. He's asking, sir, are you going to change? Is this a practice changing paper? So this is for you because I am not changing. I am still waiting. But this question is to Avnish Saklani. Sir, are you going to change your practice?
No, I think we'll have to watch it very closely. I think we've looked at our own data of short course versus long course, and you looked at the same patients. And my radiation oncologist, Reena, believes that short course is equivalent. And when I operate on them and I looked at the CRM involvement, it is slightly higher in the short course arm. So it's a difficult one. But so now if you think, I don't know if Rapido will change or not after the thing, but now if we think there is a high chance of distant metastasis, EMBA, a lot of node, then we sometimes give short course RT and chemotherapy. But so far, I haven't seen any results regarding that. In fact, the patients we gave short course RT and chemo, the CRM involvement was slightly higher compared to long course RT.
Correct, which exactly the surgeons actually have written in between the line, even in this Rapido. I think one place where definitely short course would be highly used, I'm sure you agree, is if a patient comes with synchronous liver lesions and you are planning for a curative stage surgery, like, you would need to do liver metastaectomy and this, then you don't want the chemo takes a precedence. So you start off with neoadjuvant chemo, and then they would go on for about 2 to 4 months. And then again giving conventional RT, waiting 8 weeks to 2 months. So that's one place, very high level evidence, short course RT definitely. And probably upper and mid rectum, based on this trial, there's no change in the DFS. You're not harming the patient. As long as you operate within 8 weeks, probably upper and mid rectum, probably you can on case to case basis adapt this rapido and try to do it. See, when I presented this on a tumor board, my medical oncologist telling, please don't compare the 6 months of chemo we give in conventional to this 4. So they say chemo arm is inferior, and I'm not happy as a medical oncologist, even though this trial is done by medical oncologist, showing better distal control and no overall survival. They say we need to see between 5 to 7. Medical oncologist is unhappy. You cut out this chemo from 6 months to 4 months.
I think you see, this is what is, people have said is like Buchko, when he did a study with 3 cycles chemotherapy, everything was similar. The local recurrence rate, DFS. Now you given 6 cycles of chemotherapy and that has improved. But because local recurrence has increased, so they say those people who didn't respond well to chemo, you kept on giving chemo for 6 months. So they have progressed. So that is why your local recurrence is higher. So in India, where the people who progress on chemo radiation are higher, this may actually put people at risk. So we have to look at subgroup of patients where we should not be giving that. So that's true.
Dr. Deep Goyal, my great friend, has written a question. Sometime when you have a bulky, low tumor, handling in robot becomes more tough than a laparoscopy. So now that you are a guy, right side robot, left side the laparoscopy, you have both. So Avnish, is this true? When you have a bulky tumor, in spite of chemo not responded, you prefer lap over robot? Or unbiased academic opinion, is this true? What Deep Goyal is putting here?
Okay, I mean, it depends on availability, but I think if it is a difficult operation, it is going to be difficult with lap and robotic. But with robotic, you can sit there for a long time, and so probably that may be better to do robot. But the problem comes really low down in the pelvis when you want to fire a stapler or ISR of this one. So TATME would have been a good option even after using a robot, but we changed to ISR or something because TATME has got a lot of problems now. So, but for difficult surgery, robot definitely. I think we are very resource sparing because we don't have that much resources. So if it's a very straightforward case, then lap definitely. And even for the excentrations one, because you don't have to save anything, laparoscopy pretty okay. But for the difficult ones, bulky tumor where you want to do ISR and obese patient, robot definitely. So because then you can.
Yeah, it also appears in what phase of learning curve you are. So once you pass, because most of the people who are doing robotic colorectal now have been very good laparoscopic colorectal surgeon for 7 years to decade. And now they can't compare their 10 years of good laparoscopic experience to this 3 years. So it's in what phase of learning curve you are. There is one interesting question from our senior colleague Subbu sir, Dr. Subhanesh Rao. He's a chairman and head and director of Indo-American Cancer, one very largest cancer center, minimal access in India is done. He asked that, do you look at this study now to formulate COVID guidelines? It beautifully sits into that. You don't give patient to medical onco too much for 6 months. You don't give patient too much to radiation oncologist for 1.5 months. Finish all the treatment, then operate minimal access and send. So can you answer this to Subbu sir?
I think most of the things that you do are life are accidental. Getting into jobs, marriage. So I think this is the thing. Now you want to give them chemo radiation, but the patient doesn't have money to the patient doesn't have money to travel or doesn't have travel. So for these months, we have given a lot of people short course radiation. For this, we couldn't recruit patients into trials, but they were not willing for long course chemo radiation. So maybe 6 months down the line, we'll have a fair idea because we given short course radiation to so many people. But that's a good one. It's a good paper for COVID again, went for India.
Nice. And Rudra, very, very excellent, hepatobiliary and GI minimal access surgeon from Delhi, my colleague. And, he has written after TNT, will you still do the standard pelvic lymph node dissection? Because you showed a video and you confused everybody. You showed a beautiful trial and suddenly Indian patient you showed. So he is asking, after
actually
you bombarded full RT, waited for 8 weeks beyond, do you still need to do, like, we surgical oncologists do this in gynae onco routinely. So do you still need to do that? Or if it is not seen after your course, you would stop it?
I think there's a paper by Ogura. So now they said pre-CTRT, if it is 8 millimeters, you give chemo radiation. After CTRT, it is 4 millimeter. You have to do pelvic node dissection. If you don't do it, the chances of local recurrence there is about 50%. And if you do complete pelvic node dissection like this one, it takes a bit longer with pudendal and inferior vesicle. Then you can have a local recurrence rate of 5%. But if you do only the obturator group, then your recurrence can come down by 50%. So instead of 50%, it will be 20. So after CTRT, if your lymph node is there 4 mm, you have to do it. But it has got a learning curve. We have done about 100 or so, and then we realized after first 30, then we have improved now. But it takes a bit longer now. Right? What do you think, Somo? Yeah.
There are a lot of questions. We cannot end. I'll make this the last question before I hand over to Professor Mohendra Bhandari. Anil has seen that just a thought process. So is it because, more chemo is given, it is avoided now? In a conventional, nobody knows. Everybody knows 4 months chemo is required. 6 months required or not, nobody knew. So has this opened a Pandora box that we are probably going to de-escalation in medical oncology?
I agree totally. The IDEA consortium has shown that adjuvant chemotherapy of colon cancer 3 months is as good as 6 months. Initially, they said T4 and N2 is good at follow-up at 3 years. But when the 5-year follow-up came, they said for everyone, 3 months is good enough. So I totally agree with you that maybe excess chemotherapy is there. And if you look at Prodigy 23, it's FOLFIRINOX for everyone for induction chemotherapy. So we have to be careful how our patients tolerate it and see how things go. So I think when we start changing our practice.
But all good things has to come. I need to hand over to Professor Bhandari, sir. What I want to say is a heartfelt thanks from all the Indian robotic surgeon community, GI surgeons, surgical oncologists for hosting such a beautiful webinar. This wouldn't have been possible had it not been personal interest and support from Professor Mohendra Bhandari, sir, and Vattikutti Foundation. Thank you very much on behalf of all of us, sir, and over to you for conclusion remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Somashekhar and Dr. Saklani. I must congratulate both of you, particularly Dr. Saklani for volunteering, because when I was asking for his response was the first response that he'll do a webinar. I know how busy you are, particularly in COVID times, but it was a wonderful seminar. And what I liked the most about is surgeons talking the language of multidisciplinary things. Otherwise, surgeons knew that everything is in their knife, which is magic, everything they do. It was wonderful to see the analytical approach to these trials. We don't buy things in India simply because they have come from key centers. Our patient profile is totally different. And still we'll try to really analyze and put buttonholes in these trials on their true validity and statistical component. It was really treat Dr. Saklani, and we would continue. Foundation's endeavor, foundation strength is our network. Like you see in Dr. Somashekhar, Dr. Saklani, they have always supported me for over the 10-year period. And we hope to continue to bank on it. We have a lot of international friends. And this is a gift of COVID that we'll continue to bring you the best programs as long as the audience is vibrant. Foundation has enough appetite to really quench the thirst of the people who want to give best to their patients. As regards to the questions, I don't like any question to be unanswered. And if it is okay with Dr. Saklani and Dr. Somashekhar, we will try to send you these questions. And if we have email, we'll respond these questions on website or some mode so that postgraduates and those who have genuine questions can answer these questions. Would that be okay?
That's a good initiative.
Yeah, because we don't want it to be abruptly closing, because I do other webinars for lifestyle changes and all, not under the banner of Vattikutti Foundation. And there are 100, 200 questions, humanly impossible to run webinar beyond 2 hours. But we have a chat forum, and all valid questions we club together, answer them and put them on the forum to create an interactive forum. To the listeners, I think for a specialized subject, It was a great participation of close to 50 people. And this is simply because the kind of speakers and the subject we have. Please continue to patronize the foundation activity, and we are not top down. Please write to us if you have any important subjects or a controversial issue. We will find people from our network and bring you the webinar. Our objective is just to see how we can increase your practice profile, despite the fact wherever you are practicing, in whatever constraint situations you are working. Finally, I hand it over to Dave, and praying that all of you stay safe of the COVID and leave it behind as soon as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for working hard to make those presentations and sharing them with our attendees around the world. I know we really appreciate it. The upcoming webinar, Robotic Hernia Surgery, with Dr. Arun Prasad and Dr. Parveen Bhatia. And once again, thank you for attending.